In 2001, Compaq's board made a decision that looked brilliant on paper and destroyed the company in less than a decade. They didn't see it coming, or maybe they did and didn't care. Compaq was the world's largest PC maker, market leader, household name. By the late 1990s, they'd crushed IBM, dominated Dell's early years, and owned the enterprise space. But something was rotting underneath. Here's the question nobody wants to ask. What makes a company think it needs to merge with its biggest rival to survive? Compaq had the market. They had the brand. They had the cash. So why did they decide in September 2001 that merging with Hewlett-Packard was the only path forward? The answer starts with commoditization. By 2000, the PC market had flipped. Margins were collapsing. Dell was eating their lunch with direct sales and lean operations. Compaq was still thinking like it was 1995 when they could mark up machines 40% and nobody blinked. That world was gone. CEO Eckhard Pfeiffer saw the wall coming. He wasn't wrong about that, but instead of pivoting, instead of doing what Dell did, cutting costs and moving fast, Compaq made the classic big company move. They looked for something to buy. They looked up. They looked at Hewlett-Packard. On September 4, 2001, they announced it. A $25 billion merger, the largest tech deal of its time. Wall Street loved it. Analysts called it strategic genius. 1 week later, 9/11 happened, and suddenly nobody was paying attention to anything else. That timing wasn't a coincidence. I hate coincidences. It was a distraction. And while the world was reeling, the real problem, the merger itself, was getting a free pass from scrutiny. But here's what nobody asked. Why would HP want Compaq? Fiorina was HP's CEO. She was hungry. She wanted HP to be a player in PCs and enterprise systems. Compaq had both. On the surface, it made sense. Combine two hardware giants, cut redundancy, dominate the market. It was the playbook that had worked for others. It shouldn't have failed. But it did. The integration was a disaster. Different cultures, different systems, different supply chains. Compaq employees hated HP's management style. HP people thought Compaq was bloated and slow. Both were right. And while they fought internally, Dell kept cutting prices and taking market share. By 2005, HP-Compaq was hemorrhaging money in the PC division. By 2010, they'd sold off the consumer PC business. By 2015, they'd exited PCs almost entirely. The company that used to own the market had abandoned it. All that talent, all that market position, all that brand equity gone. So what was the fatal flaw? It wasn't the merger itself. It was the assumption that size solves problems, that combining two struggling operations would somehow make them stronger. That's not how business works. That's not how anything works. Compaq thought they were too big to fail. They thought a merger with HP would buy them time to figure things out. Instead, it just delayed the inevitable while draining billions in the process. The irony? Both companies would have been better off going separate ways, downsizing and adapting to the new market. Fiorina was eventually forced out. The merger was called a failure by most analysts. And Compaq, the name that once meant something, the company that challenged IBM, disappeared into HP's corporate machinery. Not with a bang, with a slow, painful dissolve. The lesson here isn't about Compaq or HP specifically. It's about what happens when leadership mistakes scale for strategy. When they think that doing more of the wrong thing, just bigger, will somehow become right. It never does. Dell understood something Compaq didn't. You don't win in a commoditized market by building empires. You win by being faster, leaner, and cheaper than everyone else. Compaq tried to win by getting bigger. That's how you lose. And here's what really stings. Compaq had the resources to compete. They had the talent. They had the customer base. But they lacked the courage to admit that the old way wasn't working anymore, so they bet everything on a merger and lost everything in return. The $25 billion merger was supposed to save them. Instead, it was a tombstone, a monument to a company that couldn't adapt, wouldn't innovate, and ultimately couldn't survive. That's the real story, not the merger itself, the refusal to change. So to answer the original question, Compaq thought merging with HP was the answer because they'd stopped asking the right questions. They'd stopped asking why the market was changing. They'd stopped asking what customers actually wanted. They only asked how to get bigger, and that was the mistake that killed them. Subscribe. Every week we dissect the billion-dollar decisions that ended in catastrophe.